The September 9th, 2021 meeting of the Pleasanton Unified School District Board of Trustees. Would you all please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I still can't believe it's September, but we're excited to be back. I'd like to make a few introductions. Tonight, actually, I'd like to start with our student representative from Foothill High School is joining us tonight on Mall Jane. To my right is Dr. David Hagelin, who is the superintendent of schools. My name is Joan Larson. I am the current board president. Our vice president, Trustee Mark Miller, is absent this evening. We have Trustee Maher, Trustee McCaughey, Trustee Mary Jo Carrion, and down on the floor tonight, we have our assistant superintendents. First, I'd like to start with Dr. Janelle Woodward, who is our assistant superintendent of teaching and learning. Mr. Ed Dialazo, our assistant superintendent of student support services. Mr. Julio Hernandez, our assistant superintendent of human resources. Mr. Ahmad Shiglosami, our assistant superintendent of business services. And Mr. Gannon, Patrick Gannon, who is our coordinator of community engagement and communication. All right, so we do have a little bit of action to report out of closed session this evening. On item 2, in closed session, item C1, the board voted 4-0 with Trustee Miller absent, and moved by Trustee Carrion and seconded by Trustee McCaughey to approve a compromise and release agreement for internal case number SED 101.21.22 for the amount not to exceed $29,500. And that was all of the action out of closed session this evening. We have, next on our agenda is actually the agenda. So unless there's any changes to the agenda this evening, is there a motion to approve it?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
I'll second it.
McCaughey? Tricked you. Trustee McCaughey, your vote?
Aye.
Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Trustee Maher?
Aye.
And Trustee Larson, aye. So 4-0 approved. We do not have any recognitions this evening. I hope we'll have those back on the next agenda, which means we're moving on to the item number 7, which is representatives from our labor associations who can address the board. And we'll start tonight with the Association of Pleasanton Teachers, President Michelle Verkeilen.
Good evening, President Larson, members of the board, Dr. Hagelin, members of the cabinet, and our community. I am Michelle Verkeilen, President of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers. All of our members want our community to know the guiding principles of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers, that our students deserve the best resources and supports, the best class sizes, and the best educators. As I've traveled from school to school thus far, I am amazed at the incredible things I see, the classroom communities our educators have built, the work our students are producing, and the novelty and ingenuity our members inspire and integrate within our schools so that all students can achieve to their greatest potential. And it's only day 21 of school. All this with masks and the bumpy start the Delta variant has provided. As we've been working with our Tri-Valley partners, San Ramon Valley Educators Association and Dublin Teachers Association, we feel that a strong partnership with the district is the only way to support our students. The Tri-Valley partners are working together to ensure that our students have the best supports, the best class sizes, and the best educators. But we cannot do that without the partnership of our school board and top management. During closed session, you heard many speakers, teachers, and parents let you know the importance of our guiding principles. You also saw that many more wanted to comment, but apparently there is a time cutoff for when you submit to comment. We ask that information be published on the website. Also, people who use their phones were unable to be heard. Please help our community have access to being involved and being heard at these meetings. You heard about the great experiences their children in the district have had and their support for their teachers. You heard how our teaching and learning community are made up of multi-generational PUSD families. What happens in our schools, to our teachers, to our students, matters to each and every one of us. APT members put students at the center of everything we do. We want you to as well. But again, I come here and speak to you this evening, as I did just 2 years ago, and see that on the agenda, you are considering placing additional monies into reserves, while our negotiations for 2 years now has not been finalized, while our requests for student needs have not been met. We put students first. They are at the center of what we do. We believe our students deserve the best environments we can afford. By working to keep class sizes, including our specialist programs, and caseloads lower, we are able to provide our students with more of the expert knowledge and skills our APT members have. Every student has one opportunity to excel in the grade they are in. We need to be able to attract and retain highly qualified teachers and certificated staff. We do not want to be in further positions where educators we have trained are having to leave because they cannot afford to live here, because they cannot afford their health care. We have created a community here, and when we lose that community, that hurts our students. Reserves should not be raised above requirements when class sizes and caseloads and staffing support, such as nurses and social workers, are not at the level they should be. That creates a gap for our students. Reserves should not be bolstered on the backs of teachers and their families. Reserves should not be bolstered at the expense of our students' needs. We need to ensure that our students' needs are met first. Students are our business. They are the work in which we love to engage. Our families support that work. Our communities support that work. We need our district to support that work. I am honored to represent the fine educators, teachers, nurses, counselors, therapists, clinicians, social workers, behaviorists, psychologists, librarians, coaches, and specialists across preschool, elementary, middle, and high school who come to work with professionalism and share their passion and expertise with our students and families. I stand in awe of the work they do, and I stand with and for them to advocate that they have what they need so that they can focus on supporting our students. Pleasanton students deserve the best, and APT members are dedicated to supporting our students. We hope you'll join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from our California School Employees Association, Mr. Derek Besaros, the president.
Thank you, President Larson. Good evening, Dr. Haglund, ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Trustees, of the Cabinet, and of the PUSD community. As this is the first public statement of the school year on behalf of Chapter 155, I'd like to focus on just a few topics. The first is to congratulate the staff and leadership on PUSD getting this train rolling again. It has not been easy, but I'm reassured every day by the energy on my site that the school is where the students need to be. The district is doing a very difficult job making that a continued reality, but your classified staff is proud to be part of it. Second message I owe my membership and the leadership team is congratulations in getting through our contract. I know that not everyone gets what they want, but I'm confident that this time around everyone got what they need. Part of that was the bump in compensation that the fiscal department did an incredible job in processing in a timely manner. Protective language and compensation are outcomes to be celebrated, but the greatest boon to me and my team is actually finding the middle ground, finding that place where each side could be confident they represented the interests and gave concessions where necessary. Part of that concession is also living with the ground each side would not give and walking away respecting the process and the participants, even knowing that you may come back to those topics at a later date. So that's my message to the public about that process, but a special thanks goes to both negotiation teams, the Pleasanton community, Dr. Haglund, and the board, who all played an important role in the process. This brings me to my last topic. I would like to let the members of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers know that we support you. We know that you're going through a hard time. We know it can be stressful and hurtful and distract you from the reasons you come to work every day, and we applaud your ability to give the best education you can to Pleasanton students. The members of Chapter 155 are hoping that conciliation comes to you like it did for us. You deserve every bit of dignity PUSD can provide, and every appropriate avenue dignity is delivered. Thank you for your time and have a good night.
Thank you, Derek. At this time, we'll go on to agenda item number 8, which is public comments from the community. These are comments that are not on any item on the agenda, and due to the Brown Act, the board does not engage in conversation on these items because they have not been agendized. So, Mr. Gannon, do we have public comment this evening?
Yes, President Larson. Our first public comment comes from Oleg Gomazov.
Hello. Yeah, I am a parent of two wonderful kids in LSO, and I've spent in Pleasanton 6 years. My public comment is not related to the actual issue probably, but I wanted to also address concern about that our schools are underfinanced. So as far as I know, I even tried, I think a year ago, to question this with the PUSD committee and other representatives, what is happening with our budgets with schools. And the answer is that we have very old laws which do not allow us to properly get budgets allocated for schools in particular. Pleasanton is one of the top best cities in the United States for living, and there are people who pay well their taxes, but these taxes don't go to our teachers, unfortunately, as I understood the subject. So my comment is to maybe address the negotiated issue, one of those which we have right now in agenda, by finally fixing these laws, by finally fixing those issues related to financial part of it. So this way our teachers will be appreciated well, our staff and our schools will have more money for their needs and resources. So this has been happening for many decades, as far as I know, since the 80s, 1980s probably. So please reconsider if this is an option and it's in your power to do something with this taxing and other budget allocations for our schools. So we will not be having this discrepancy between our wealth and the goodness of the city and the ways how we treat our teachers. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our next public comment comes from Steve McCoy Thompson.
Yes, hello. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much to this board, superintendent, members of the cabinet. It's great to be here. My name is Steve McCoy Thompson. I'm the executive director of PPIE. And to respond to the first question, our schools across the state are limited. And one of the roles that PPIE plays is that we supplement and we provide funding for supplemental staff at all of our schools. So go to our website at ppie.org, vote for the kind of staff that you want us to fund, and learn about what we do. I'm happy to report that many of the parents I've talked to are happy with the start of school. And I just want to commend our teachers and principals for doing a fantastic job. I want to give you a couple of updates. I'm also happy to report that PPIE, during our school registration drive, raised about 95% of what we raised in 2019 before the pandemic, which was a record year for us. So that's fantastic. And just want to thank everybody for supporting us. And we bring in corporate support as well, so we are able to fund back more to our schools as a whole than we actually receive from parents. So that's amazing. Also want to give a shout out to a program that we started last year called the Business School Engagement Program, where we're getting business volunteers from Omron Robotics and Salesforce and Oracle and Roche Molecular to provide volunteer support to our students, largely through Zoom, and it's going really well. And finally, I want to give you an update about our gala. We had planned one for October 24th, an in-person gala. We did a survey of teachers, or rather parents and principals. And based on the feedback, we feel that it's safest to not hold the in-person gala this year. So we're going to go virtual. It's going to be from October 16th to the 24th, similar to last year, which was very successful, with online auctions. Juliet Goodrich from CBS News will do a podcast. and it'll be exciting. So we thank you for joining us and supporting our work.
All right, thank you. We have one more public comment, but just a reminder, this is for items not on the agenda. Our last public comment comes from Kevin McCarthy.
I actually spoke earlier in the previous meeting. I'd like to first of all say that I support everything that Oleg said in his comment. One thing is that the district, we as parents in the district are in one of the most expensive districts in the country. We pay our fair share going into this environment. And at the same time, we also expect the same performance to come out. The same metrics have to apply. So the only thing that I'd like to add to my earlier comments were, I'd like to know a few aspects of why are we losing educators and admin to neighboring districts based on the pay disparity. In business, outside in the business world, high turnover is typically a function of business processes. For all the math lovers out there, that's an f of x equation. And so that f of x equation actually relies solely on the input from this board here and from the community. And we're asking for a little more data in that. Have we considered the base pay of our district with the base pay of nearby districts? Have we considered the benefit package as compared to other districts? And to reiterate my request from earlier, I would like a presentation from the board to provide a justification as to how and why negotiations have evolved to this point and answering the questions as to where we are in the process of negotiating with the teachers union. I'm not one that's for or against on either side, but I like data to support my decisions. As a parent in the district and as a person who's in this industry that supports data-based decisions, I would expect the same from the district. Thank you.
All right, that is our last public comment for the evening.
I had 4 seconds left. There was no way for me to get into that. I would have loved to like.
Thank you for the public comment. All the comments were appreciated. Just one comment, if for people who are listening who need more information about how school finance works, I would like to just refer you to ed100, that's ed100.org, where you can find out some of the answers to your questions. But feel free to contact a board member as well, or Superintendent Haglund. All right, so now we're going to move on to item number 9, which is our high school representative report. Amal.
Hello everyone, my name is Anmal Jain. I'm the Foothill High School representative, and first I'd like to go through the successes that Foothill's gone through over the past month. We had a club fair recently that was very successful, and numerous clubs gained new members of all 4 grades. We have a new building in progress, and we have our traffic system. Although it needs a little bit of work, it has improved dramatically since the first week of school. We have new camera systems which are ensuring safety implemented around the school campus, and new intercoms which have helped us in advisory period. And finally, we have weekly emails from the Wellness Center, which has helped several students get through their days. Now, I'd like to go through some concerns that some of the students have been realizing over the past month. First of all, in the beginning of the year, the bell schedule was very new to our students, and it was a concern for a lot of us, especially us not memorizing the schedule and it being hard for us to get around. One thing that we'd like to, so there was smoke a few weeks ago, which although we couldn't control really, it was, I heard a lot of concerns on that. Reckless driving in the school parking lots and school lunch lines that have been quite long that although the free lunch has been really helpful, we'd like to maybe work on that. I'd like to go through some of the activities that Foothill has been happening in Foothill. We have some clubs that have started off with outdoor meetings and meetings online. Some of the major clubs, such as Model UN, has their boot camp coming up. National Honor Society, Debate, Arts, and DECA. Our musics, our choir, orchestra, marching band has started their practices. Our career technical education classes have already started going well with business, engineering, science field trips, and we have homecoming either October 8th or 9th, and we're still working on the details to meet COVID requirements. Back to school night and senior picnic ticket sales have been really exciting. Next, I'd like to go through some athletics. So our athletic teams currently are cheerleading, girls tennis, water polo, cross country, football team, which by the way has practices at 4:30 a.m., which they do not like. Very spirited, but although the football games are very spirited, boys basketball has open gym, girls tennis had their first game, and girls volleyball also had their first game. Finally, I'd like to go through some academic classes, which include some classes such as AP Environmental Science and Zoology, which already had their first field trip to a local creek, and ceramics that have started building pots, and African American literature, finishing identity essays. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great update. And some of the concerns you've shared with us are not new. We've heard about that, and we're concerned as well. But thank you for bringing some of the other things to our attention. That's really helpful. Now we will, unless board members have any questions for Amal, we will move on to item number 10, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Hagelin.
Thank you, President Larson. Well, we're getting there. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Doyle and his art students at Amador Valley High School for the beautiful artwork that's now hanging in the boardroom. We have some crazy talented students and always appreciate it when they share their artwork with us. I also want to thank the trustees for the active discussion during the board governance workshop at the end of last month. We collected a good amount of information and are now compiling your ideas into objectives that will reside in the 21-22 organizational work plan. These board objectives will come back to you on September 23rd for approval, and then they'll be written into the organizational work plan. So you might recall a while back when the trustees approved a policy supporting the election of a student board member. The policy was developed by members of the Student Interschool Action Council, or SIAC, and the related voting process has just concluded. So I'm very pleased to congratulate and to welcome with us for her first board meeting, Sachi Biani from Foothill High School, PUSD's first elected student board member. And Sachi, you may recall, actually wrote the policy. She was the leader in SIAC that developed the policy that she later got elected to. So Sachi, you're going to join us now as a panel member and pretty soon here at the dais with us every week. She'll attend each regular board meeting, receive regular briefings, and vote with the trustees on items heard in open session. In addition to our new student board members' involvement on the dais, we will continue to have the student representatives from each high school provide reports to the board, just as Amal did tonight. I'm looking forward to having Sachi at each of our meetings to ensure that student voice is included and that our young people are at the heart of our discussions and actions as a district and as a governance team. Sachi, did you want to say anything?
Of course. This is honestly a surprise to me actually winning the election. It was just like an idea for future students to actually go through. But I'm super excited to be serving my community this year, and I look forward to a wonderful year with everybody.
All right, thank you so much, Sachi, for your willingness. Any board members want to give congratulatory comments?
Well, you've impressed us all along with your presentations to the board, so we're delighted to welcome you up onto the dais with us, and congratulations. Anyone else?
Congratulations. We're glad you're joining us, and certainly your voice is very important.
Yes, congratulations. Looking forward to working with you, and hearing and advocating for the student voice is really, really important. So congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, a job well done. We're looking forward to working with you.
And next week, you'll get your first board packet to read. I know you're looking forward to that.
No good deed goes unpunished.
It continues to be a blessing to see our young people engage in the things that they love to do in our schools, whether it be in a classroom or in a competitive setting outside of class. I have enjoyed truly getting back to supporting our student athletes and musicians from the sidelines at football games, and look forward to being present at other school events and performances. We know that our students tend to learn best inside of a classroom with a great teacher and engaging with their peers and doing things that bring them joy. On August 26, we are pleased to hear the Alameda County Public Health Department, along with health officials across the Bay Area, confirmed their ongoing support for in-person learning. In their joint letter, health officials emphasize the importance of universal masking, vaccinations for all eligible individuals, practicing good hand hygiene, and staying home when not feeling well. These are things that each of us can do every day to reinforce our commitment to in-person learning and keeping our schools open and safe. If anyone in our community is looking for additional ways to help, we're currently hiring for testing and contact tracing technicians to support those efforts to keep students safe and in school. We remain committed to doing our part. We thank our entire PUSD team for their tireless efforts. We're also appreciative of our parents and community members for joining us in this important work. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Yes, I think we've all been, the navigation at the state level about in-person learning has been bumpy, to say the least. So we're glad we're settling into some sort of a groove and moving forward. We are going to move now to our consent agenda. These are routine matters generally voted on by the board in a single vote, unless a trustee wishes to, or community member wishes to make comment or pull an item. I do need to pull item H, the contract ratification. Is there any other item that a trustee wishes to pull?
I'd like to pull item K for a question.
All right. Would you like to make a motion for the other items?
Sure. I will make a motion to approve consent agenda for all items except for H and K.
I will second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of items H and K. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. Passes 4-0. So,
You have another vote.
oh, tonight, it's effective tonight? Okay, so I do need to explain to the public that while, of course, as we said earlier, we welcome Sachi to the board. I apologize, I didn't realize we were being effective this evening, Sachi. Your vote is preferential, so you are casting a vote, but it does not count into the, what's the word for it? It's not quorum, into the vote count for passage. So Sachi, how do you vote on the consent agenda item without H and K?
Aye.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks for the reminder. I was thinking somehow that it was going to be at the next meeting. Making a note here for myself so that I don't skip you the next time. So we are still doing roll call votes, by the way, just because of the situation. We have some people on Zoom and we have some people here, and we also can't see people's faces completely. So that's why we're doing roll call votes at this time. So item H on the consent agenda is ratifications of the contracts that we do that were entered into by the district in the month of August. I need to pull it because as an employee of Alameda County Office of Education, there are there are two at least MOUs on the contract list. It is not there are rules about conflict of interest, and we've been advised by our attorneys what those are, and these have nothing to do with the role that I play at the Alameda County Office of Ed, which I am a director in District Advisory Services, so therefore I am able to vote on the item. So with that, I'll move approval of ratification of contracts for August. Is there a second? Did you second it? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the ratifications of contracts for August. Sachi, do you vote aye or nay?
Aye.
Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. Wonderful. And Kelly Makashi, would you like to address your item K?
Yeah, I just have a question. We received some emails about the donation process and in particular for Horizon. So my question is really more for Ahmad, perhaps for the benefit of the public, to give some information on what is the process when someone provides a donation into the district. What is the process? Do they get a receipt, tax ID, or the time frame of information on how those funds will be spent? Just a brief clarification would be helpful.
Sure. We do have a process by which, the donations, when the district knows about them, they're coming to the district, we have a form, it gets completed, it gets recorded, and then it gets placed onto this report that comes to the board. Some organizations are using other methods to donate, and I think in particular Horizon is using Benevity, and so they're donating to this kind of placeholder, which then transfers the funds to the district. So they may have donated, but it may not have yet been transferred to the district. And in addition, we have to look at how granular we can get the data from Benevity in terms of the donations that have been made. And so I've seen those emails come through, and we're going to follow up and try to provide the best reporting possible. But the donations are tracked and are deposited in the correct locations. And so different schools also have set up those accounts. And so when the donations come in, we kind of allocate them according to the donors' wishes in terms of the school sites and the different departments we have.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. So just to double check, do donors get a receipt with the tax ID for tax purposes and all that? I assume they get some sort of formal communication back on the receipt of the donation at some point?
Yeah, if they're coming formally to us through this, we will acknowledge their donation through a letter. In terms of the other kind of avenues that the dollars are donated, like through Benevity or other type of, I'll have to look into it and see what kind of reporting they perform and what we can. And so that's something that I'm going to look further into, and I'll get back to the board on that.
Okay, no problem. I think that's a really good point to make, though, that donations can be submitted to the district in many different ways, and so that's really, really helpful. So thank you. That's all I needed for clarification. Thank you.
Joan, could I ask one question on this?
Yes, of course.
Ahmed, is it possible by our next board meeting to have a brief summary of how many donations have come in for Horizon and what's the total amount so far we've received?
Yes, we will provide that.
Okay. The weekly update would be just as well if that's easier.
Okay, we'll provide that report.
Okay, I would just like to make one more comment on that, and that is that for most parents who are listening, who are saying, hey, I make lots of donations to the school, most of what you're donating usually is running through your PTA or booster club, and those are not donations to the district. Those are donations to those organizations, which are typically 501c3s. So if you have questions about the tax, we're not going to advise you on that anyway, and neither is the organization. But those, you would look at the tax ID for those organizations, and then they're making the contributions to the district, typically. So I just wanted to clarify that as well.
Excellent point. Yeah, because my question was related to district donations, so thank you for that clarification.
So is there a motion to approve the approval of donations?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve item K, approval of donations.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the donations for this time period. Item number K. Trustee Bayani.
Aye.
Trustee Carrion.
Aye.
Trustee McCashy.
Aye.
Trustee Maher.
Aye.
And I as well. Motion carries unanimously. All right, we're moving on now to the items for report, discussion, and possible action. The first item today is item number A, discussion and possible action on the 2021 Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services Plan. Are we heading it over directly to Dr. Woodward?
Yeah, this will go to Dr. Woodward, who I believe is going to turn it over to Director Galletti.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Good evening, President Larson, trustees, Superintendent Haglund, Cabinet, and members of the Pleasanton community. In 2020 and in 2021, the California Department of Education cited PUSD as significantly disproportionate in the overall identification of Hispanic Latinx students within special education under specific learning disability. As a result, we are mandated by CDE. We are required to uncover the root causes of the disproportionality and the identified students and create annual programmatic improvement plans that are documented in the plan that we refer to as CSACE. And this plan outlines for the 2021, along with the 2020, new and improved programs and services to address each of the root causes and how the focus student populations will be monitored for progress. And at this point, I'll turn it over to our elementary director of education, and that is Shay Galletti, and our coordinator of equity and access, Soraya Villasenor. Go ahead.
You're muted. I was doing a great job. You were. But we will start again. And first, let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get the presentation up. And now we can restart. Good evening, Dr. Haglund, President Larson, trustees, cabinet members, and community. The Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services Plan, called the CSACE Plan, is a required programmatic improvement plan to address the significant disproportionality in special education. Tonight, along with our coordinator of equity and access, Soraya Villasenor, we will give a progress report on the 2020 CSACE plan and provide an overview of the 2021 plan.
Significantly disproportionate means that we as a district have an overrepresentation of a particular racial or ethnic group in special education. In PUSD, we have been identified to be significantly disproportionate in the over-identification of Hispanic Latinx students in special education under SLD, specific learning disability. We are also disproportionate, but not significantly, for overall disability for American Indian students, autism in African American students, and discipline for African American students. Given the significant disproportionality designation, the California Department of Education has directed PUSD to complete a data analysis to help us uncover the root causes, and with that information then create an improvement plan, which is documented in our CSACE plans.
In January of 2020, PUSD was notified of the significantly disproportionate identification. This kicked off the first 3 of a 4-phase programmatic improvement process. The first phase was establishing a leadership team and a stakeholder committee. The second phase was analysis of student and district data to uncover the root causes. The third phase involves development of a plan of improvement. In spring of 2021, PUSD continued to be identified in the same area and again embarked on the 4-phase programmatic improvement process. Each phase of the process is outlined within the yearly CSACE plan and includes data and root cause analysis, development of measurable outcomes, and implementation of activities to address the root causes. Each plan has a 27-month time cycle and are implemented simultaneously. Currently, we are in the fourth phase of the 2020 CSACE plan, which focuses on implementing, evaluating, and sustaining the activities that are planned. The 2021 plan is a new plan that builds off our 2020 plan and includes activities to support the newly identified root causes.
The final budget for the 2020 CSACE plan was $306,959. This is the yearly budget that supports a 27-month period plan. Apportionment for special education funds is estimated to be greater in the 21-22 school year, and that is why the estimated budget is slightly higher for the 2021 CSACE plan. The estimated budget for the 2021 CSACE plan is $335,421. There were two identified root causes in the 2020 plan. The first root cause was a lack of a fully integrated multi-tiered system of support. The second root cause identified was cultural dissonance and implicit bias within the school system that then resulted in an inconsistent application of discipline policies, procedures, and practices. The measurable outcomes created in the 2020 CSACE plan address these root causes and seek to remedy them. As a district, we have already made some notable progress and completions on planned activities from the 2020 plan. Both the coordinator of equity and access, myself, and the second intervention specialist at Valley View have been hired and onboarded as of July 1st, 2021. Both have been working on all the activities outlined in both plans. In order to strengthen our work and to ensure completion of our measurable outcome number 2 within our 2020 CSACE plan, we have added an amended activity to include the work on grading for equity. This activity will include the work that is currently being done at the secondary level with Joe Feldman. The plan includes creating cohorts at the middle school and high school levels, 30-minute individual teacher coaching sessions, and cycle of inquiry sessions.
In starting the 2021 plan, our goal was to review the data from our first plan to identify the gaps and the areas in which we wanted to dig deeper to understand why the disproportionality was occurring. Working with our TA facilitator, we held additional focus groups, including a Hispanic Latinx parent group and a staff focus group from our 2 focus elementary schools. In addition, we reviewed data for long-term English learners. Common themes emerged from each focus group, including the parents' desire to be better equipped to support their children in school, and for our teachers, a better understanding of English language development and pedagogy. In addition, it was concerning to discover that approximately half of POSD's long-term English learners speak Spanish as their first language, and half of all long-term English learners are students with disabilities. Our data analysis led to the third phase in which I spoke about, and this was uncovering the root causes. The first root cause that was newly covered was the lack of understanding of second language development, cultural pedagogy, and instructional practices to support English language learners. The second root cause was a lack of authentic partnerships with parents and families, which has led to a lack of parent engagement. Once root causes are identified, we enter into the next phase to develop a plan for improvement. Our first measurable outcome builds off the 2020 plan, and the activities focus on the implementation of the MTSS framework and on professional development targeted at literacy and English language development. The second measurable outcome for the 2021 plan is new, and it addresses the root cause on parent engagement and involvement. Activities outlined in this plan are to improve and increase parent knowledge of the educational system and how to best support students in school. We have concluded our presentation and we will open it up for questions, but we ask tonight that the board approves the 2021 CSACE plan. Our next steps after receiving board approval will be to submit the plan to the California Department of Education for approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Galletti. Are there questions from the board?
I do have a question about which schools are we focusing on? Are all the teachers going to be trained? Are we focusing on Valley View and Hearst? And I think I was talking to you about the data, and when will all of the schools be updated on their data?
A couple things. Within the CSACE guidelines, we have to target schools based on enrollment and where our significant disproportionality is happening for our students of Hispanic Latinx. And so Hearst and Valley View are our focus schools. However, if you look at the activities, yes, the activities are taking place, but they also are broadening on a much larger scale. We are looking, for example, when we look at the MTS framework, that will be our entire district. When we talk about early literacy training with letters, we started this year with the rollout that it's mandatory for our TK, K, and 1 teachers at Hearst and Valley View. However, we opened up a second cohort, and we've had 40 teachers from the other 7 elementary schools sign up for it. The same with our EL Achieve. We are ensuring that we have representatives from our target schools, but it is also opened up. And I didn't reference what EL Achieve is. It is our designated ELD pilot that we are using this year and providing professional development in it. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, it does. And the last question was the data. Will all the schools be completing that work?
In terms of the data, can you explain what data you're pointing to?
Yes, there were several schools that were missing, like Hearst and Leidixon and Hart and Village. They didn't have, this was on slide 7, and it was talking about data collection for MTSS.
Okay, those were a working document and notes, and not all of the schools have been met with. And so in working for our MTSS, our coordinator, Soraya, will be working with each schools to learn about, we call it a coordinated coordinated services team. And we're looking at and aligning all of our practices across the district. And so, yes, eventually those data points will be gathered from those schools.
Okay, thank you very much.
Trustee McCaughey?
Yeah, I have a comment and then a question. Just wanted to reiterate the efforts to put together the EIS plan. I know it was very comprehensive, and Shay, I know you got accolades in the district and in neighboring, well, I think it was Alameda County, and how the plan that this district put together was an exemplar for other districts. So I just wanted to appreciate and thank you for the hard work to put this together. I just wanted to go back to on one of the slides talking about the additional root causes and just make a point about the lack of understanding of second language development and pedagogy for English language learners, and how important that initiative will be to our community, because that is a very comprehensive, I mean, it's very loaded. And especially to the part about the lack of authentic partnerships with parents and families. I think that targeting that will be really helpful for our changing community and the demographics in our community. The comment I would just make on the goal that is associated with that, and talking about family participation going from 1.9% to 3.8%, that is just for the stakeholder survey, correct?
That is correct.
And can you talk a little bit more about what that survey is and what's being asked on that survey, just to give context for people who might be looking at this for the first time?
That is the PUSD district-wide stakeholder survey. Usually Patrick Gannon puts it out at the very end of the school year. And so it's a survey that's wide, in meaning wide breadth to our community and looking at many of our programs and curriculum in schools and classrooms. And so what we looked at were the number of respondents from Spanish and Latinx. And what we would like to have happen is that double. And so 1.9% represented about 50 respondents last year. We would like that to double to about 100%, 100
Yeah.
respondents.
That makes, that helps clarify on why that percentage might seem so low, but it's a district-wide survey, and I think that's really good just for clarification. And the point I would just like to highlight is that helping to address parent engagement will be measured in so many other ways. Could you just highlight a little bit about the programs that were bulleted, about the School Smarts Parent Education Program or the Parent Engagement Workshops, what that entails so the public is aware of the other ways that we'll be working to engage with the parent community?
Yeah, I'll start with the parent engagement workshops, and then I'll pass it to Coordinator Soraya to talk about School Smarts and also our work with the mariachi program. The parent engagement programs, if you recall, at the end of last year, we had a transitional kindergarten program for parent and child, or caregiver and child, in which 2 of our kindergarten teachers led, and it really aimed to help parents and understand the standards and the curriculum that their children were going to be taught and get school readiness and prepared and really create that partnership between school and home. We have expanded that this year, and we are going to have a Spanish cohort. And the teacher is obviously Spanish. She's actually our intervention specialist that we just hired, part of the CSACE plan, and she's bilingual. And so we're excited to get this kicked off. We hope it will be in October and November, and we'll come back with the board with updates and hopefully great pictures for that. We'll now talk a little bit about School Smarts and then our work at the mariachi program.
Yeah, so that parent engagement class series will be held during the mariachi program. We're trying to figure out how to bring more Latino families, Latinx families into these programs. So we figured a lot of our families are already coming. The mariachi program is very well known in Pleasanton. It's got a lot of publicity, recognition. So we wanted to capitalize on something that's already happening, something already amazing happening in our district. And since our parents are there, our families are there, what a better way or opportunity to provide even more support to our families. So that parent engagement series for 4 to 6-year-olds is not just for people in the mariachi program, but it's going to be housed there just to make it easier for families who are already going, whose kids are already participating in the mariachi program, to get even more support. The School Smarts program is a program that has been in Pleasanton for many years. Rosa Isela is one of our parent liaisons who helps support this at all the sites. She is a really big advocate of this program. Every year she has it in Spanish and in different languages throughout the sites. It's a PTA program that talks about how to engage yourself in your school, in your child's school, how to support them academically. So we just want to bring more attention to it. We want to make sure we're doing more outreach so more of our families get to participate in this. I know that Hearst and Valley View have both agreed to do it this year. At Valley View, it happens alternating years. But this year it's going to be happening at both sites. Hopefully we could do 2 cohorts, Spanish one and one in English, again, to increase participation for our Latino families, for all our families, right? Like Shay said, what's good for some is good for all. So we just want to spread the word even more this year, support the programs that are already happening in our district, strengthen them and bring more attention to them and more participation. The other one was the mariachi program. Another thing that we're doing during the mariachi program is we're trying to bring intense interventions to be occurring during the program. So in the past, it was volunteer intervention that was occurring, and the ladies there just did a fantastic job of trying to support as many students as possible. We want to make it more formalized so that students are getting more targeted instruction and intervention. And again, it would happen during those times. So it works with the schedule. So if the children are doing their mariachi, their lessons, one session, the second session, they would go to tutoring. And we're working with other coordinators of the district to make sure that that's happening and the kids who need this intense intervention are receiving it.
Okay, thank you for a great summary on that. I just wanted to just reiterate that even though the goal, highlights one aspect, there's so much more that the district will be working on, these outcomes. And I just really appreciate sharing that information because there's just a lot that we'll be working on disproportionality. And thank you for summarizing that. Thank you.
Welcome. Trustee Maher, do you have any questions?
No, I'm glad you answered the question about the mariachi. I know that's a great program. How many students do we have in the mariachi program currently?
Good question. So it has kind of fluctuated, especially because it went virtual last year. So they had some participants drop off. They're currently working on establishing dates. September 23rd, I think, is going to be the first day. So they're sending out flyers. So I don't know exact numbers because we're hoping that more kids join, but the numbers tend to be sometimes around 100, right? 100 participants. But there's the whole grade span. I think it starts in second grade, and then it goes all the way to high school. So it fluctuates. We're hoping to get, again, more participation, and I think a big part of what I want to do is do this, right? Bring these programs that we already have to light for our communities, do more outreach for our communities so that more people have access to all the great things that are happening in PUSD.
And it's open to all students in Pleasanton, correct?
Yes.
Good.
I really enjoy hearing about the building upon the program. The wraparound services were part of the program from its inception, and like you mentioned, the work of the volunteers was phenomenal. But I'm really appreciative that we're building in more. I don't want to say rigor, that's the wrong word. More structured intervention and making it possible. It kind of makes me think about the fact that we have these. Well, our two high schools are practically small cities in and of themselves. We have these plants, these physical plants that, I feel like could be better utilized for the community in terms of some of these families, coming together, where there's a place where they can have, access to the internet, where the libraries are open, where there's, so I feel like we should be looking at staffing for ideas about sort of the community services and the wraparound services that a lot of other districts have done before us. And part of when people are looking at this who aren't familiar with the changing demographics in our community, we have phenomenal teachers, as you've heard this evening and every meeting. But English language development was not traditionally something that we focused on here in Pleasanton because we didn't need to. We didn't have a lot of English learners 20 years ago. And our demographics have changed quite a bit. And so the PD that we're offering teachers to do that ELD, to do that the designated ELD time, is really critical to help our teachers help their students in this way. So I'm really, really pleased. Sometimes it takes direction from outside the state or the feds to help us recognize that we have some work to do and help us provide the supports for the students that we need to. So I appreciate the report, and I'm excited to see the continuation of the work. Anything else? I don't think we have any public comment on this item.
Actually, I had a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I think one of the trustees asked about the possibility of this program extended to other schools, such as Village. Do we have a timeline on when this program, I think the something will be extended to the other schools?
Do you mean the mariachi program, the CSACE program altogether, or
MTSS?
what program part of the presentation?
It's the CSACE program, I think. It's the one where they look for where they find the disproportionalities, and then they're
okay, so you mean the entire scope. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Just wanted to clarify so I made sure I answered your question correctly. Right now, so for our first 2020 plan, our focus schools are actually Pleasanton Middle School, Foothill High School, Hearst, and Valley View. Part of our root cause in our first plan was a disproportionality in suspension rates. And looking at the suspension rates and our students who are African American and where it was happening at, that is where we determined the focus schools were at. How I mentioned before, though, everything we're doing, we will extend to the larger populations of our 15 schools. 9 schools are elementary, to all of our 15 schools. And so the practices we are putting in place, the activities we are putting in place, we want to make sure that it does span the whole district, because the underlying goal of the CSACE plan is that you're creating systemic change throughout the entire organization. And some of that work, Sachi, you will see, we weren't talking about it directly tonight, but with our equity work that we are embarking on with our district. And you'll see that at Village as well, Foothill, Amador, all of the middle schools too, and elementary.
Yeah, thank you so much. That really cleared it up.
Can I make one more quick comment?
Of course.
Shay, based upon your response and what you just shared, I know I did ask this in the board communication, but as you were talking, it reminded me that, I know that part of the tracking was suspension rates. Could you just share a little bit about, or perhaps other district personnel who answered my question about, how do we currently track behavior issues with students at the elementary level?
Would you like, I saw Soraya's hand go. Soraya?
Yes, so at the elementary level, we use a program called SWIS. It's something that was brought to us through PBIS, and the admin at the site levels, at the elementary sites, got training on it. We use it to tie it to our school rules, and it's a great way to get data on what's happening, trends, are there issues during recess, are there issues during lunch, before school, what are the issues? And then with that, we are able to create different methods to support whatever's happening. So we try to create like academies in different schools, all through our PBIS. But that's how we track what's happening in terms of our behavior. Kids get trackers, those get tracked onto SWIS, and it helps the team really see what's going on site-wise, and what can we do to make trend changes.
Sure. So it's just this might have already been done, but it would be interesting to see if there's any trends for disproportionality at the lower grades, because certainly behavior issues don't just sneak up at high school. So it's not necessarily directly related on the CCEIS plan, but it might be something that looking and examining the data for trends, if that has popped out. But thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
One more thing I'd like to note too, and when we are tracking behavior, and this isn't anything, but especially with what Soraya was talking about, it's really for staff to be proactive and implement positive things. So if we're noticing we're having a trouble spot on the playground, at the slide, well, what can we as adults do so that we can make that a positive place for students and that we see less behavior? So it's not so much of a tracking students, it's more of where do we need to be proactive and help children build pro-social behaviors and create an environment where students are safe and feeling good and having fun, and the behaviors aren't occurring. So I just wanted to also make that clarification.
I think that's really important to make that distinction. I just meant it more from a looking at it from a data perspective, at some point reflecting on, those behaviors that are flagged. Is there certain subgroups of students that are having more issues than others? Is it Latino students versus Asian, or just something to look at? And you're right. PBIS is really more about proactive behaviors, but it's really more, I'm thinking about how to help look at disproportionality in student behaviors, and is it being affected, how students are doing at the elementary level. But thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Sachi, do you have anything else?
I am good, thank you.
Thanks. I just don't want to forget you because you're up on the Zoom screen. So with that, thank you for the presentation. We're looking for approval this evening. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021 Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervention Services Plan.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the CSACE plan for 2021. Trustee Bayani?
Aye.
Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Trustee McCashy?
Aye.
Trustee Maher?
Aye.
Trustee Larson? Aye. Carries. Thank you very much. And now on to item B. This is report, discussion, and possible action of the fiscal year 2021 unaudited actuals. Are you going to kick it on over?
Sure, I'll kick it on over to Mr. Sheikh Salami.
Great, thank you. Good evening, board members, community, and staff. I'm going to go ahead and get this shared first, and we can begin. I do want to thank the hard work of our Executive Director of Fiscal Services, Tom Gray, and he's available to also assist me in answering questions, and his staff. It was the unaudited actuals this year it was challenging, to say the least. And so the unaudited actuals represent the closing of the books, actual revenues, actual expenditures for the 2021 school year. We'll go through some of the key findings. We'll cover our revenues and our expenditures from a high level, and then we'll kind of dive a little deeper in our variance report and kind of cover our other funds and also go deeper into our ending fund balance and next steps in the budgetary process. So key to this COVID year was the district's ability to use one-time funds to address a lot of the issues that we face with distance learning, ensuring student safety, returning the students back to school in March, and addressing learning loss. The district successfully utilized those one-time dollars to achieve those goals and further reduce pressure on our unrestricted general fund. Of the $11.4 million the district received last year in one-time COVID-related funding, we spent about $7.5 million of those dollars last year, and the about $3 or close to $4 million we received towards the tail end of the fiscal year. Our ending fund balance, which is at approximately $30.4 million, includes $10 million of restricted dollars, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into that balance further in the meeting. In terms of the costs that are not included in this budget but do affect the 2021 fiscal year are compensations that were negotiated and approved by the board with CSCA. So those get recorded in the 21-22 fiscal year because that is the actual year the dollars are being spent, but they are actually impact the budget that we're closing in the sense that those dollars will be reflected in the future as reductions in our fund balance. We'll go into the reserves. They stand about 6.4%. And finally, and most importantly, is that while we're closing the books on last year, we're looking into the future, and significant challenges await the district as the hold harmless period for our funding will come to an end this fiscal year. And into next fiscal year, the 22-23, our funding will be based on actual enrollment of this school year or the following, whichever is greater. And so last year we lost about 400 students, and currently we're tracking another 400 students. So the aggregate is approximately 800 students less than the 19-20 fiscal year, which we're currently being funded at. Just a quick snapshot of our revenues, about $185 million in total. Our LCFF, again, was flat at the 19-20 levels. We had a 0% COLA, and again, was based on that funding, and so again, the challenge awaits us in the future. The other thing you'll see in here that is kind of significant, I'm going to give me a second while I bring my the little red dot, is that our LCFF, which is driven by enrollment, that includes local property tax and state, the state funding. And so while our local property tax is strong, it still only provides about 60%, about 59% of that LCFF. The rest of it comes from the state. And you'll see that in addition, the state and federal dollars are significant because of those one-time funding that we received last fiscal year. In terms of the expenditures, about 177 million, as I indicated earlier, that does not include salary and benefit cost increases that we agreed to with CSEA or any type of increases for APT and management. The expenditures includes about $23.3 million of expenditures that we contribute to restricted programs. And there are two main restricted programs. One is our routine restricted maintenance to ensure that 3% of our expenditures are spent to maintain our buildings and facilities. And special education funding is not funded completely by the dollars that are provided by both federal and state. And so like every other school district in California, the general fund does contribute to it. We actually have a pretty tight special ed expenditure here at PUSD, but we still have to contribute from the unrestricted funds. Again, we'll go into this a little bit in the other slides, but our books and supplies increased from 1920 levels, but we're kind of less than estimated actuals, and we do have some carryover dollars there. Again, salaries and benefits, over 80%, 81% of our expenditures, which is typical for most school districts. Okay, so I tend not to like to present these very busy reports like this, but I did feel that it was important to go through this. And so while you orient yourself to it, the top area here is the revenues, and then the bottom is our expenditures. I grayed out the original budget because the original budget that was approved back in June of 2020 was the one where we were in the COVID era. The state was making significant cuts, and we really didn't know what was going to happen. So it's a worst case budget. So after the state enacted the state budget, we then revised the 45-day, what's called the 45-day budget, and then we updated the first interim, second interim, estimated actuals, and then the unaudited, which is the closing of the books. And so you'll see a very consistent revenue from our LCFF. It remained consistent throughout the various reporting. And then in the federal and state, that's where you're going to see significant increases as we learned about new grant dollars that were coming in. And then the local revenues, we as the donations come in, that's when we earn those dollars. In addition, there was an accounting change that had us also include funding or revenues from the ASB. So there was a couple of changes there that caused that one to increase. On the expenditure side, you'll see that for our salaries, both the certificated and salary, from the 45-day budget to the unaudited actuals, we did remain very consistent in our projections and our planning and the way we closed. And similarly, for our classified staff, in the benefits area, we did remain constant, and we kind of ended where we pretty much started. We did tighten things up at estimated actuals, and the increase in here are mainly related to the STRS on behalf. So there's a revenue that gets booked in terms of other state revenues, and then it went out. So that variance there occurred because of that. The main area of carryover and savings is where we saw both in our restricted and unrestricted was in books and supplies and services. And in a lot of ways that makes sense. Operations were different last year where we were in a COVID situation, so typical operations were not ongoing. And then we did receive significant restricted dollars towards the end as well, which are carrying over into the current year. The next two slides, I'm not going to go into detail. This is, if you're looking for further detail, this is the unrestricted dollars. And so you'll see, again, pretty tight revenue. Salaries area, but again, it's the book supplies and services where we had the most significant carryover, and a similar trend in our restricted dollars as well. In looking at our ending fund balance, you'll see that 10 million of that is in restricted dollars, and so the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant is the large chunk of that, of about 4 million. The routine restricted maintenance work, much of that work was happening in the summer, and so you'll see that balance go down as our projects are being completed over the summer, the painting projects, the field projects, the playground projects, and so on. Our local site donations sit in our restricted bucket, so those are donations that parents, families, and others have made to the school sites, and so those are restricted, and they sit here. And then our local SELPA, their reserves and balances also sit in this area. We have the mental health and the special education. There are some other dollars, lottery, medical, classified PD, and others that are restricted, and we do have plans for their expenditures in the coming year. Next, the district board committed funds for textbook adoption and for technology last June, and so those are in the committed category. Those dollars can only be spent once the board takes action to move them out of the committed category. Next, the district has made assignments based on known plans and programs and other things that are coming up. And so you see the LCAP dollars that we have in the assignment, the mom medical reimbursements, the district's technology plan. We receive significant E-rate money and others, and so we put those dollars back into the technology to make sure we can maintain the significant infrastructure and devices that we now have and maintain. In addition,
if you could
Sure.
just provide a 30-second clarification about how E-rate works.
Sure. So that's and sometimes I go a little too fast because these are like kind of the ins and outs of our of the business. But thank you for the reminder. So when we spend dollars on various upgrades, it could be for Wi-Fi, internet connectivity, and others. The federal government provides reimbursements. And so we spend those dollars, and then we submit for the reimbursements, and then those dollars come back to us. So it basically allows a method by which the federal government can maintain internet connectivity infrastructure for school districts. The governor's budget that was enacted expanded TK for a full year. And so over the next 4 years, the district has to be ready to be able to provide TK facilities for all students who want to attend TK. It's no longer going to be those who were born through December 1st, I believe, correct, Ed? And so every year, 2 months are going to be added. So we're expecting a significant number of new students, and we're going to have to prepare our facilities and our spaces. Bathrooms, playgrounds, access, drop-off, pickup. There's a lot of things that we're going to have to think about. So this is not the total dollars that it will require us to get there, but it's a placeholder to help us plan and get as we have to ramp up. We also know that at some of our schools, we do not have physical educational space for our students who need PE, and so we need to allocate additional dollars as we have been improving our PE and field spaces and classrooms for our physical education students. And then lastly, we talked about how some of our trucks are no longer compliant to be out on the road, and so we need to set aside some money, hopefully, to get those replaced this year. So those are the assignments that we have set on needs that we have. Then we look at the reserves. We have to set aside that 3% reserve required by the state. But we know that best practice is for districts to have reserve rates between 10 to 15%. The board has developed a policy, AR 3100, that states that every year the district will look at its ending fund balance and review the unassigned, unappropriated dollars and designate up to 20% of that into increasing their reserves to 9%. And so that is before the board to consider if they would like to increase that. And so if we took that action, that would equate to about $867,000, and it would then bring the additional reserve rate, increase that to 1.4 total, so the total economic uncertainty and AR 31 would be about 4.4. So we're kind of little by little chipping away to get to the board policy we've set out. And then finally, we have some cash that's unspendable that are in our accounts and are helping with our revolving accounts. And so that makes up our ending fund balance. A few more slides, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. We do have other funds, and in general, most of our funds are doing well. Last year, we were concerned about the cafeteria fund, but through the hard work of our Director of Food Services and the support of the community, we were able to get significant reimbursement from the federal government, and that fund did not lose as much money as we were expecting. The funds in red are related to our facility program, and so you'll see obviously the Fund 21, which is the measure bond. The district is now briskly moving along those projects, and we spent over $45 million on facility improvements throughout the district. We have the developer fee funds are for growth projects, and we pay the portables out of those and some of the future projects that will be needed. The district has some additional capital set aside as well, and the Sycamore fund was from the sale of a property the district owned. The one fund the district staff is concerned about, and we brought this to the attention of the board throughout the year, is the Enterprise Fund 63. And so it had a healthy reserve, but through the impacts of COVID, those reserves were brought down. Now that the program is returning, again, Horizon has been increasing some of their capacity. Kids Club has been going back to more of a normal operation. We do expect them to return to a more healthy situation. But that fund did take an impact. If you remember last year, we had set money aside for our other post-employment benefits. We now closed Fund 20. Those monies were moved to Fund 71, and those monies are going into a trust fund. And that trust fund is the SERP trust fund by CalPERS, and already it's paying higher rates of return, around 4 to 5%, and so we'll be bringing those reports on a yearly basis to the board. And so that will help with our, again, our liability as it relates to benefits for our retirees. So that's kind of a picture of our other funds. The next steps in this process is there's an independent financial audit that will be completed this year. It's usually completed by December. We bring that to the audit committee first for their review, and then we'll bring it back for the board in January. We continue to closely monitor the impacts of the pandemic and the multi-year budget, monitoring, again, enrollment in ADA for the current fiscal year and obviously beyond. and working on, finding long-term solutions to develop financial security. So a lot going on. I mean, today we had a report, Alameda County office brought the CBOs together, and we had a report from School Services California, and the amount of information and changes occurring on a consistent level from the state is incredible. We have trailer bills, and we have a cleanup trailer bill. And it impacts independent study, it impacts so many things. So there's a lot of moving parts, and we're really trying to keep up with that and being able to report and make good decisions. So with that, I'll turn it over question and answer and hopefully board action.
Are there questions from the trustees? Mary Jo.
I have two questions. You said 800 less students. Can you tell us about how much money we would be losing if we didn't get those kids back?
Great, that's a great question. So approximately we receive close to, I would say, 10,000, depending on the grade, and for high school students we receive more funding from the state, elementary less. But if you take 10,000 as a good number, and then you have to remember enrollment is not ADA, but we're close. We're about 97% ADA. Now this year we may see some impacts from some of the COVID situations, but if we take just rough ball, it's somewhere between $7,500,000 to $8 million
So
of loss of revenue.
7 million loss.
Loss, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question. I have a question about slide 9. When you were talking about AR 3100, are you just moving the money from the unassigned? It doesn't do anything to our 6.39% overall reserves, does it?
Correct. It moves it from the unassigned unrestricted to a placeholder, to an assignment placeholder, which says, look, we're trying to identify this as reserves.
Right, so you're not increasing the reserves?
No, it is a designation.
Okay.
It's a designation.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to just ask a question, expounding on one of Trustee Carrion's questions. How many students could we potentially expect in the future for the pre-K that you were talking about, and making accommodations for that? So I know that there's been some talk that might help extenuate the loss of enrollment currently.
Great. Again, that's another great question. So we're actually kind of been discussing that. So again, our kindergarten classes, again, have been smaller in the last few years. So we're looking probably somewhere around 800 kindergarten students right now. TK is not going to be mandatory. And so we're going to have to work with our demographer to see, okay, what percentage of that student body is going to come as TK? Is it going to be 80%, 85%? And so based on that, then we can model, let's just say we're going to get 80% or 90%. So then we're talking over somewhere between 700 students, 700, 750 additional students that potentially could come in as TK. And so, yes, they will bring in revenue, but you have to remember we then have to staff the program, and it's a 2 adult to 24 student right now, and potentially if the state has additional funding, it might go to 2 to 20. So those are things that we're going to have to work on and see. So there are potential revenues, and there are costs to the program as well.
Okay, and then another comment, just to get clarification for the benefit of the public. Can you just give a quick clarification what AR 3100 really is and what it does? I mean, just in case anyone's listening and is not really familiar with that. Because
Sure.
That is,
Sure. I wasn't here when AR 31 was put together, but I was happy to see AR 31 because, again, the best practice is for a district to have reserve rates, in that 10 to 15. That is best practice, right? And so the AR 31 built a plan that would allow the district over years to kind of get the reserve rates to that 9% level. That was the goal that was built in that AR. And the reason for having that healthy reserves play a couple of roles. One, to help with cash flow. Because you have some months you spend more, some months less, and so you want to have a good cash flow. That helps. Two, and most importantly, is they allow the district to kind of the ebbs and flows in state financing. Some years there's cuts, and some years there's some additional money. Some years there's unexpected costs. We may have have to hire some more teachers for a certain reason. There's a lot of things that go on, and with that additional dollars, you can kind of absorb those unknowns. And instead of having to reduce staff significantly, you'll tap into that reserve to be able to get through a difficult or challenging fiscal year. And so in a lot of ways, it protects our staff and the district from the, just that difficult and challenging environment that we live in. It's a real protection for the district, a protection for the staff to not have layoffs, to not have cuts and that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you. I think that's really helpful to give clarification for context, so thank you.
Trustee Maher?
Ahmed, when I look at the additional facilities for TK, and there's, $4 million plus in there, do we get any reimbursement other than student financial, money for our students in class? Do we get money for buildings, money for anything that's outside the scope of what we normally do?
It's a great question. So the state in this budget that was passed set aside, I believe, about $500 million, something of that effect. That's statewide. And so if you can imagine that every class costs about $400,000 to $500,000 to build, it's not going to get to every school and to every facility. It is a matching fund. It's also a fund that's based on money goes where the need is. And so, we will put in our request as we develop our projects. We got to first figure out, where are we going to build the capacity, where the classes kind of fit in. And so that's the whole idea of trying to do the master plan update and the work that we're doing around that. But once we identify it, we will definitely, having those dollars will allow us to go after state matching funds because it is a matching program, and having those dollars available gives us points towards those dollars that maybe some other schools may not have.
But there's no guarantee we get the matching because it's kind of on a as-needed basis?
Yeah, I mean, the state has allocated a certain amount. You have to apply for it. There's a point. We don't really know the details of the program yet. These programs are being rolled out faster than they can figure out the details for them.
Okay. Then my last question, the unassigned or unappropriated funds, those for the board to decide how that is spent with advice from the cabinet?
Correct. Again, typically, we're going into difficult, challenging times in terms of our revenues. We're going to need every single dollar that we have to get us through the next few years as we go through some of those challenges. And it's a very difficult position for us because on the one side, we've received significant one-time dollars that we need to spend on some areas, and we're trying to do the best to hire, support programs, after-school programs, additional food service programs, all of these things that we're trying to do. But on the other hand, we're looking at our ongoing dollars being restricted because of our enrollment, and that's the hard work that we all are working on.
Plus all that goes away.
Yeah.
Or many of it, I should say.
Yeah, I would just remind us to look at the multi-year projections that were presented at the adopted budget time, where this balance does not exist in the third year out. So, and I was here for the revision to AR 3100, and Mark was as well, and I can tell you the reasons why, we looked at that, and there was a desire on the whole board's point to increase reserves for all of the reasons that Ahmad just said, some of which were the fact that most of us had lived through having to lay off folks during a downturn, which can happen, and sometimes happens in the mid-year. And nobody wants to have to do that. These are people's lives, and we want them to be able to stay employed. And so, but we also knew it was very unrealistic to say, okay, we're going to set a, we want to go to 9%, so boom, we're going to try to get there all in one fell swoop in a big jump. Because that would have meant no raises, that would have been really difficult to do. And so we crafted this policy. Again, none of the people that are in front of you here were here at that time, but Mark and I were here, and he reiterated his support for this at the budget subcommittee meeting. So the compromise was to try to take a percentage of what we consider to be like carryover. In other words, these were dollars that we didn't spend that were really one-time dollars because they, it's not something you can spend on, you can't spend $100,000 on salary for $100,000 that year because it's ongoing after that. So you have these one-time dollars. How could we craft a policy that's going to allow us to increase and get closer to where we want to get over time? And that's how we got to that. But we also knew that putting it in place with a hard and fast, the board will or must or shall, is also challenging, and it causes a lot of uncomfortableness when you have those sort of hard and fast rules. And so that's why it was May. In other words, this is the goal. This is how we believe would be the best way to get there, a reasonable way to get there to increase our reserves. And so that's why we came up with that. And I don't mean we as in Mark and I mean we as at that time, the assistant superintendent of business and the fiscal team and the superintendent at the time. So that's the evolution of that. So it is up to the board's discretion. Some years we have done the 20%, some years we have not done the 20%, we've done 10% or whatever. Just so that we can, like I said, over time, slowly increase our savings in our savings account. When you have, extra money, you put aside a little extra money. So that's the evolution of that. I'm concerned, to me, I did the math really quickly too. I'm like, it's $8 million. The enrollment, we're not unique. Enrollment is down across the state. We still don't know whether those kids are coming back to public school. We don't know whether they're going to come back to our school district. But our revenue looked really flat in 2021 because we were held harmless for ADA. We didn't have any changes to that. In a normal year, you would see a bigger fluctuation to the next year as your enrollment changes. So I'm pleased that, you guys did a great job getting us through last year. Everybody just really, across the district, just really pulled their weight to make the best of a challenging situation. So I was really pleased to see that we ended up where we did. And hopefully we'll be able to bring those enrollment numbers up.
Ahmed, could I ask couple real quick questions? The reserves economic uncertainty, the 5 million plus, that was already there, correct? That's been carried over, correct?
Yeah, that's the minimum 3%. We have to be able to show that in a multi-year budget. If we are unable to show that, then it starts basically a process with the county and the state that they start looking at our books and start getting involved because that is a state requirement, yes. And we don't want to fall below that.
Okay. And the AR-31, that amount, do you know what percentage that is?
So if you add the current amount that we have set aside plus what we are recommending, the 867, that's about a 0.5. So it'll take the AR to about 1.4%. And so total, with the 3 and the 1.4, it's a total of 4.4. But so we're asking a 0.5 add to the reserves right now.
And we could go up to 20, correct, John?
Well, that is 20% of the,
Yeah.
what I think of as carryover. Maybe I'm not using the right word.
Yeah.
Unassigned balance.
Yeah.
Which is what falls out at the end of the year, right?
And we're
So
only
to the
looking
bottom.
at 4% of that, correct?
So we're putting of the one, let me just get my numbers straight. Of the 4.3 million,
Sorry.
we are, the board policy says 20%. That 20% translates to 867,000, and that's about equivalent to a 0.5% of our total expenditures. So we're basically increasing our reserves by 0.5%.
Oh, and Steve, Dr. Hagelin just reminded me that of what the year that we adopted this. Actually, you were on the board.
I
so
was,
you
I
were
remember.
here.
I remember
So
voting.
you should have corrected me.
I think I was the first one to say yes. No.
Ahmad, can you explain the rationale for the 20%? Just the thought process on how you derive that number for versus 10% and 15%?
Yeah, I believe that the board, when they developed that, felt that that was a comfortable maximum for the board to consider, as President Larson indicated, to slowly build it up, and so I don't think there was a magic or to that number. I think it was just what was felt at that time as a comfortable building up of it.
Sorry I didn't clarify the question. But you're proposing tonight that we set aside the maximum 20% versus 10 and 15%. I was just wondering how you picked that number or the thought process behind it.
Yeah. I think we discussed it with the committee, with the budget committee, and that's the consensus we reached.
Okay. Sorry, Trustee Maher, I apologize. To jump over
For
your
what?
question.
No.
Well, you were
okay,
asking some
you're
questions.
okay.
So back to you.
You're all good? Sachi, do you have any questions?
I'm okay.
You're okay.
She's all right, put it on.
I don't get any of it, but
Soon you will. Set up the meeting, we'll have a discussion.
It takes time, and we're all here to help you, Sachi.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not kidding about the website called Ed 100. It is a really good primer for how school finance works because it's super complicated. There is no easy answer to any of this. So you're just on that learning curve. So I would recommend that starting there, and then of course the staff we can help you. So, all right. So is there a motion?
President Larson, are we making two motions? Because I noticed on the item there's...
You can. Certainly you can split it into two.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the 2021 unaudited actuals.
I will second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the unaudited actuals for 2021, fiscal year 2020-2021. Trustee Bayani?
I'm going to abstain on this one.
Okay. All right, making notes. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Trustee Mukashi?
Aye.
Trustee Maher?
Aye.
And Larson, aye. Okay, so now we have the motion, we have a potential motion for setting aside additional reserves pursuant to our Administrative Regulation 3100. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the committed 20% of the unassigned ending balance to the designated reserve for economic uncertainties per AR 3100.
I'll second. All right, it's been moved and seconded to set aside the additional 20% of the unassigned, ending balance pursuant to AR 3100. Is there further questions or discussion?
Just one last question. And what the total amount would that be?
So the total amount that will then reside in the AR is it's the current amount of 1.68 plus the 800,000. So you're looking at that. The AR 31 will be about 2.4 million.
I think the question more specifically is what's the additional amount that they're voting on this time?
867,000. It's on the board packet. 867,000 and $37.
All right, seeing no further discussion, Trustee Bayani?
Abstain.
Okay. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
And Larson, aye. Thank you. Just also wanted to report out just a little, I guess I could do it later, but it's kind of appropriate to hear, since we were talking about next steps in the audit process, the Budget Committee is also going to be bringing to you at the organization meeting to combine the Audit Committee and the Budget Committee into a Finance Committee. So just looking forward to the December meeting. All right, thank you very much. We'll now move on to item C, report discussion and possible action for the GAN appropriations.
Great. Tom Gray, our Executive Director, is going to walk us through this one.
Sure. Good evening, Community and Board. This is another piece of closing out the fiscal year is the GAN limit. Proposition 4 of 1979, known as the GAN limit, developed appropriation limits for all government entities, including school districts. This limit was established as a saving for government spending and is increased each year for inflation and population adjustment. The GAN limit calculation is a routine exercise and has no effect on district funding. The schedule approved by the board with resolution 202122.06 will be submitted to the Alameda County Office of Ed and the California Department of Education. The attached schedule shows that the district has completed and does not exceed the district's GAN limit. Again, this is a routine nature, and we bring this to you yearly after the budget unaudited actuals have been approved.
Sorry, I was reading. Are there questions for Mr. Gray from anyone on the board? With that, then I will seek a motion to approve the resolution 212206 for the GAN appropriations limit.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number for the GAN appropriations limit for 2021 and 2122.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 2021-2022.06 for the GAN appropriations limit. Trustee Bayani?
Aye.
Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Larson, aye. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, item number D, this is report discussion and possible action on another resolution. This one to move to board election by trustee area. Dr. Haglund.
We'll go over to Mr. Sheikh Salami.
Great, thank you. At our last board meeting, we discussed the moving the district from the at-large to by area, and a presentation was given by attorney William Turnick from DWK, and Mr. Turnick is also here to answer further questions. And so we've developed a resolution which will begin that process. So I'm going to ask Mr. William to provide a few comments, and then we'll have the board question, answer, and then hopefully an action item.
Good evening, everyone. Again, William Tunick with Dennis Walliver Kelly. Just wanted, as the CBO mentioned, the last board meeting, we had a presentation talked about the CBRA and transitioning from at-large to by trustee areas elections. Following the direction from the board, you have before you tonight a intent resolution, which is the first formal step in making the transition from your current at-large election system to by trustee area elections. The resolution indicates the reasons the board is doing it and lays out a timeline and sort of next steps that would get the process going, which would see you start the pre-map hearings, which is the first part of the process, I believe later this month. If there's any questions about the resolution, I'd be happy to answer those.
I don't necessarily have a question about the resolution per se, more about the pre-map public hearings. Are those going to be part of our regular board meetings, or are they going to be additional meetings?
Those are great questions. And so we feel that both for public engagement and also time, that the best way forward is to take, half an hour, an hour, and I'm sure that the map ones will probably be a little bit more discussion at every single board meeting from now till December. And we've mapped it out that then the next meeting on the 23rd will be kind of a good discussion, pre-map meeting discussion about criteria, getting input. Our demographer, Davis Demographics, will be making that presentation and taking input. The following meeting, we hope to have the census data by the 14th. And so we'll be able to start providing more pre-map meeting information, taking feedback from the board and community. And then the subsequent meetings in October and November and December will then be looking at the map options. And so in order to make sure we get good public engagement, we're going to work with our public information officer to set up a web page that will house all of this information. We'll use the eConnect. We'll make sure we talk to our Pleasanton Weekly and get an article in there. So we're going to start to ramp up that piece of the communication.
And is there a deadline? Is it March where we would have to have this all done in order to make it for the election in November, or?
That's a good question. And William, help me out. I think our goal is to get to a map by that December, because there's a timeline. Once you start this process, you got to be within that timeline. And so I believe that meeting that timeline will give us plenty of opportunity to let the elections office know about the change. Okay. William, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just as far as the elections office goes, usually they're going to want the information March or April before the election, so there's clearly enough time for that. I think the schedule that we've anticipated and that's reflected in the resolution would be to keep the district closer to the 90-day timeline that's mentioned in the statute, and that's why that timeline has you making the adoption at your December meeting. So that's the timeline. And just as far as the hearings, those can be done as part of regular meetings. They can also be done as special meetings, and maybe as the board goes through the process and sees what works and the best to get public input, you're of course free to make changes and try different things as we go through this process. We're not necessarily tied to any one particular approach as the board goes through.
And I'm sorry I didn't ask this question ahead of time, but it was something I was thinking about after the last meeting. Do we know whether or not this actually would save us any money on the elections cost? Because on the years, when we're doing the off, we do 2 and 3, right? So on the years when you're only, instead of having to be in, 40,000 pamphlets for that trustee area, how does that work in terms of the information going to voters? Would we save any money on the election cost from the county registrar? Does anyone know?
Good question.
It's something that we definitely can follow up with the Alameda County office and the elections office and see. There is some logic and rhythm to what you're thinking, because there's less ballots, there might be less cost, but I hadn't thought about that, but yeah.
Like I said, I didn't think about it early in advance. I apologize, but yeah, I would be interested to know. It's not the number, not a reason to or not go, but I just was thinking about it. So, Mary Jo.
Yes, there are some things that I think I personally would like to add or change to this, especially regarding Section 3. I want to make sure that we have a lot of community engagement, and so I want to, instead, where it says add public input, I want to make sure that we have a community mapping tool that will be included in the community actually mapping out some and actually drawing a map. For example, Dublin did this. And Dublin had a process, and they had the demographers make a map, and they had community members make a map. And all of those maps were able to go to the board, and they ended up picking the community map. So I want somehow that we include a community mapping tool. And I also am concerned about the timeline, because this is talking about in December. And I know that it's going to be really hard to engage community members around the Thanksgiving and the Christmas holidays. So I feel like we need to extend that a little bit more. And again, I'm really think that we need to have a community mapping tool.
So I have a lot to say, so I'm just bear with me. I have mixed feelings. I'd say why is the impetus here now? It seems really rushed, and that bothers me. I want to make sure that this is thoughtful and well thought out. And when we're talking about boundaries, I know we talked in the spring about overflow with our students, and yet we haven't had an update on that. But this is, this was just brought up last meeting, and I know we agreed to a resolution, but I didn't realize it was going to come so quickly. And then I too am very uncomfortable with the timeline. I do agree with Trustee Carrion. I feel this needs to be community driven, with trustee and district support, because that's where we're going to get the buy-in for this process. And I want to be really clear. I really do believe in this, and I advocate for it. I think it's important that we consider, equity, and I think that there's a good reason why this is being brought up. But I am very concerned about the timing of it, and would concur with if the deadline isn't until March or April to the county or to wherever we have to report the updates. I think that that we maximize that time to make sure that we get the appropriate engagement from the community. And I would say that if we're not there yet, there's no. I think my bigger question is if we have a resolution in place that we're going to do this, whether it be 2022 or 2024. Would that help safeguard us in terms of a potential letter? I think that's just one question I would have probably to the lawyer.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So the short answer is that by law, the resolution provides immunity for 90 days from when it's adopted. So in a lot of cases, that's why you'll see the schedules being relatively compact. That being said, I've seen districts that have adopted resolutions that said, we'll do it within the next year and haven't received challenges or demand letters. So that's not to say that's not an option for the board, but technically speaking, that 90 days is what's in the statute. And I think that's why you see a lot of agencies going through it pretty quickly.
Okay. So I do feel that there are some adjustments to the resolution as per the meeting that we had 2 weeks ago, some conversations that were mentioned, but I don't see it in writing in the resolution. I think it's important where it says, whereas the transition will not affect the term of any board members, I think it's important to reiterate, which was told to us, that it will take place in a transition of a 2-election cycle. I think that would be helpful to clarify. And I do think it's important to really think about the boundary process and to make sure that, we're going to make every effort to make each, area equitable. The other thing that I think about that makes me nervous of the timing of this is what cost will this impact moving forward. I know at the city level, they're still working on 6,000 more units of housing, and that might impact housing, and will that require us to adjust boundaries later, to adjust for that. So I'm kind of struggling with the timing on this. Not that I don't support it, but I also think it's really important to protect our elected officials who are at large. I've heard of in other cases where this transition took place, where there was an at-large member, and then during the cycle for election, their term wasn't up, but another candidate ran and won their seat, so they're no longer eligible for that. I heard that it possibly took place in Livermore at the city council level, but I just want to make sure that we are safeguarding our elected officials, and that as we transition, that no area will be impacting those trustees that will be up for election. I just think that's really important. In other words, that if 2 seats are up, that those areas will not impact other trustees. I think that having some language in the resolution, I know it was talked about at the last meeting, but I think that would make me feel more comfortable with the process, and really to protect all of us through this transition.
So can you address the, I mean, it is in the process. Do we need to have specific language that we did talk about the fact that one of the reasons for the timing for doing it now is because there will be 2 open seats next time, and so it would be a good time to draw those, whatever boundaries get drawn, then the election that's going to happen in November 2022 would be for those 2 seats that will be open wherever they end up getting drawn, which would not impact the incumbents that are in the 2024 election. And
I totally agree with that, but I think that, like I said, I want to make sure that we're very careful with the process and with the community engagement and the boundary process, that we're engaging with the community and just being really thoughtful about it. And I would just say, if it's not 2022, it would be 2024. I think the commitment is there, and I think that it's really important. But we have a lot going on, and we also have to think about, in tandem, I did also talk to some other board members where this has transitioned, and so I think one piece of feedback that they gave was that how important it is to remember. One other item that I actually think that would be important to put on the resolution is that the election process will not change the actual role of the board member, because I say that because there has been some negative side effects of, board members then becoming more attached to their actual district area.
Territorial.
Right, and versus looking at the whole good of the entire district. And so that was from a former board member in Dublin, where they said, that transition has happened, and they've seen some negative impact. They give the example of facilities. So when we're talking about how to spend and allocate funds for facilities, it kind of made it difficult to just remember that ultimately, even though the election process is going to change, our ultimate responsibility will still be for the good of the entire district. And I believe that is really important, that it should be put into the resolution, because I think it speaks volumes that just because we're talking about the election process changing, that our actual role, even though we're elected by an area, our role is for the good of all of our students. And I think that's really, really important. And another example they also shared is that there's a layering process, so that even though we might have a certain area, the enrollment boundaries may not necessarily match that. And so, for example, Trustee Maher and I might have some schools that overlap, because that can help cross-layer, so it's not so divided. And that's the concern I have.
Right. Well, those are the concerns I shared last time as well.
Well, I'm just allowing my opportunity to speak as well, because I've had to.
So would you like to have the resolution come back?
I'd like to propose if we could bring it back in 2 weeks with the changed language.
Trustee Maher, did you have some
I
comments?
have a couple of things. One, I've had the opportunity to speak with some community members, and originally I was kind of for this, I'd be honest with you, and I'm not totally against it, but they said, Mr. Maher, this is the Pleasanton community, and if you start dividing up the community, then no longer will it be the Pleasanton School community. And these were people that diverse cultures, and they were telling me that, and kind of put me back in my heels, to be honest with you. And then when I saw this on the board agenda, it was kind of like, whoa, 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 when it says to move to board election by trustee area. I thought we were going to study it, look at it, hear from parents, hear from our cabinet, and all of a sudden here it is I'm voting for it, and so I wasn't going to. I'm not going to vote for it tonight. I just need to know more. I want to include parents more, because they're the ones that are going to have to really look at it and make a decision, how do I vote on this? And I would like to really include them on what do they think, Do they think this is a good idea? Do they want to move towards this? And then maybe it comes back to us and we go, okay, I've heard from the public, they're kind of in favor of this, then I'll move forward. But right now, you're asking us to move forward when I don't even know what most of the people think. I don't know what they think. I mean, those are my thoughts.
Trustee Maher, I just wanted to thank you how eloquently you have shared some of my feelings. I just feel that I'm a very process-oriented person, and if we had it driven, we hadn't even received an email from any community member on this, and I appreciate, it brought to the board for an equity perspective, but I don't feel comfortable without the, really support and buy-in with the community. So I concur with what you're saying, Trustee Maher.
Now, I guess if we get sued, it'll be a meaningless point. We'll have to move forward. But
It'll be the same process. But yeah, that's true. But
until that time happens,
So I guess my question is, how do I get included that I want a community mapping tool? What's the process? Do I ask to make an amendment to this, or do we just bring it back to you guys, or what happens?
I think what we'll do at this point is we'll pull the item, and we'll take your input, and we will consider bringing it back.
okay. Thank you.
yeah, that's fine. I mean, again, it was coming forward, and again, I shared how my feelings on the issue, but one of the things I do want to remind us, though, is that we did give staff direction to bring it back to us. We didn't say, go out and study it. We didn't say, come bring another presentation to us. So I just want to be clear moving forward that when we give staff direction, they're going to do that and they're going to come back to us. So it may feel too fast, and it's not. I don't have a problem pulling it or postponing it or not doing it all. Honestly, that's not my comment. I just want us to remember that, But again, sometimes we do things and then we have second thoughts, or we have, things get raised to us that we didn't think of before, and that's fine too. But just bear in mind that when we do that's they've done what we asked them to do, which is to come
And I
back to us.
apologize for that. Especially if Matt had to put another 10 hours of his valuable time doing it. I really do.
Well,
All right, so we're not gonna vote on it this evening, and staff will come back with some more information and reconsideration.
And I also wanted to just also say I apologize too, if, as a newer board member, if I had understood the magnitude, I would have spoke up and said, let's wait a little bit and get more information. So I apologize as well, but thank you. Apologize to the staff and timing.
All right, moving on. Number E. We're going to talk about the collective bargaining agreement with the SEA. Oops, my microphone is now on. Thank you. This is report, discussion, of possible action on the collective bargaining agreement with the California School Employees Association for our new successor agreement, July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023.
Mr. Hernandez.
Yes, good evening, President Larson, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Haglund, Executive Cabinet, Community, and staff. Before the board is the language that was agreed to between the district and CSEA for a 3-year collective bargaining agreement. The bargaining agreement has 20 articles in it, 10 of which were negotiated over a very lengthy process. I do appreciate Derek Pizarro's and Laura Martinez and the whole executive team for CSEA, as well as the management team, in tackling this huge task. It was not easy, but we managed to come to an agreement on all of this language. I am going to go really briefly on some of the articles so that there's an understanding of what was tentatively or agreed to pending board approval. Article 2 of the collective bargaining agreement ends the membership language. That was language that was outstanding with the Janus case that was passed a few years ago. Article 3 corrected some grammatical errors as well as some calendar items. Article 4 leaves availability. It aligned with the current law related to bereavement and military leave. Article 5 had some language as it relates to interviewing internal candidates, asking that the internal candidates get preference in their interview. Article 6 updated the evaluation timelines. As we know, probationary status for classified employees is now 6 months versus a year. Article 13 really codified the 6-month probationary period. Article 18 made some changes to the salary and benefits, which was an improvement that the district proposed and which they accepted. Article 19 established some definitions for clarity as far as the understanding between the district and the association. Article 20 adjusted some language in the new classifications based on the classification study that was approved. And then there was Exhibit A, B, E, and I, and those were all aligned so that they existed in one document versus having a number of exhibits. Those were, in essence, the changes, although I briefly summarized them. They were pretty lengthy. They are attached, obviously, to the item. What the ask is from administration is that the board approve the changes to the language to the collective bargaining agreement. Earlier, the board did approve the compensation piece. There was an AB 1200, and the board did vote for that compensation piece. Today, we're asking that the board approve the changes in the collective bargaining agreement language. At the subsequent board meeting, all items will be collected together. Right now, we are proofreading all of the items, and that entire collective bargaining agreement will be presented to the board at the next board meeting. Right now, we are proofreading both the CSEA team and the district management team. So today, we are asking that the board approve the changes to the language that was agreed to for the 3-year collective bargaining agreement. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Questions from trustees? Comments?
Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
All right, I see none, and Sachi, I don't see you coming off Zoom there. Then I will seek a motion to approve the 3-year collective bargaining agreement with the California School Employees Association.
I move.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the collective bargaining agreement with the CSEA for July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. Trustee Bayani.
Aye.
Trustee Carrion.
Aye.
Trustee Makashi.
Aye.
Maher.
Aye.
Larson. Aye. Congratulations, and I know a lot of work went into this. We really appreciate all of the negotiations and collaborative work that's been done. We're really exciting to have a contract for the next 3 years. All right, on to item number F. This is possible action on a variable term waiver request for adapted physical education.
Yes, thank you.
Hernandez?
Before the board is a request for a waiver for Mr. Dane Schaefer. Mr. Dane Schaefer is a paraeducator in our school district. He does hold a bachelor's degree from Sonoma State University and is currently enrolled in a credentialing program. The state does allow us to ask for a waiver when an individual has not yet completed all of the credentialing program. He is enrolled. We did look for a qualified credentialed teacher to teach adaptive PE. Unfortunately, we were unable to retain a teacher with that credential. As a result, we are asking for a waiver from the state, but in order to obtain that waiver, the board must vote to agree to issue the waiver to this candidate. Again, he is enrolled. He is a paraeducator. He is currently working in his adaptive PE credential, and we are seeking the board's approval to move forward with the waiver. He is currently with our students now, working. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Trustee Maher?
The only question I have is for Ed. Ed, are we okay regarding special ed and services being provided by a person who's on a waiver for a student with IEP stipulations about adaptive PE?
Yes, Trustee Maher, if we go through this process and it's approved by all of you first and then approved by the CTC, the California Credentialing Office, then yes, we would be good. And this is a needed service. We do have kids who have adapted PE on their IEPs, their individualized education plans, and this is a service that we currently are seeking a person to do the.
Is he currently subbing in there?
Is he in a subbing?
He is,
substitute? Yeah.
yes. So he currently is with our students. He does have a 20-day limit because of the fact that he's subbing in the classroom. If the board were to approve the waiver, we would submit the waiver, and then that would be pending a credential, which will allow him to stay.
Yeah, I'm not against it at all. I just don't want someone coming back on a due process complaint saying, and you put a teacher that wasn't credentialed in teaching my son an adaptive PE when it said on his IEP he should have, 60 minutes of adaptive PE a week. And
I appreciate that, Trustee Maher. Hence the reason why this process is public, why it has to be voted by the board, and all of the efforts that we've made to retain a credentialed teacher have to be documented. And as soon as the board, if that's the will of the board to approve, that would protect the district from that claim. The individual is in a credentialing program for adaptive PE. We will give them all the support needed to ensure that we are compliant.
Yeah, so the few questions I had is, when is he expected to finish his credential?
So, great question. So he is given a 2-year period to complete his credentialing program. We would hope that he would finish that credentialing program sooner. We are able to issue a different waiver were that not to occur, but our candidates have been really successful in the past when we've issued a waiver. We worked with them to ensure that they complete their program within the year.
And another question I had was, are the students who he will be teaching, who are on the IEP, do their parents know that he's not going to be fully credentialed? Like, are they aware?
So, great question again. This is the reason why this process is public. So we are posted this agenda item. His name has been posted to the board, so that notification has been made. But again, he will be trained. We'll be working with the special ed department, and he will be fully credentialed. And as soon as he is, obviously, we will not need this waiver.
So just a comment, I really think this is important because it's sometimes hard to find qualified people, and I don't want to penalize someone because they don't have a certain credential. And as a former educator, I know how frustrating it is to want to be able to participate and have a job and do something and then have a hindrance of certain documentation, deny that process. And this is something that, is really helping, special skills and helping with our students. And I just wanted to just say that it really is an invaluable, and I appreciate the fact that this consideration being brought to the board for these types of waivers. I think it's really important, especially when we're talking about shortages of teachers for other positions. So I think it speaks volumes to the importance of the type of this waiver and how it can benefit ultimately our students, and having qualified people who will get the training and get that certification as needed. But just wanted to share some thoughts on that.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, we pass on a quarterly basis. We're talking about, whether or not we have misassignments, miss teachers out, not who aren't credentialed working and so you'll see that information come before the board as well. So definitely it is a public process for sure. With that, is there a motion?
Can I just ask a question? So how long has he worked for us in Pleasanton?
So he's been a paraeducator with us for 2 years and
2 years,
working in the
and-
special education field.
Okay.
So he has been working with our students, and again, we are advocating, and a long time ago, about 7-8 years ago, there was a program, the state sponsored paraeducators to be elevated into a credentialing program. Unfortunately, the funding was eliminated for that. We are continuing to encourage our paraeducators and classified staff to seek that pathway. To that end, we are developing an academy to be able to allow that to happen. In this case, the need is high. We do need a teacher for adaptive PD, and this individual has opted to go into the special education program, which is a difficult program to get into. So we do appreciate his efforts. And to President Larson's comment, we are audited annually by the county and the state to ensure that our credentials match the work that the teachers are doing. And that report is forthcoming, and that would indicate if there is what's called a misassignment. So far, we've been 100%, which is great. Were there to be a misassignment, we would correct that immediately, but that would be a notification from the county and the state. This would not result in a misassignment, given that if the board's will is to agree to the waiver, we would submit that to the state.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve those variable term waiver requests for adapted physical education.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the variable term waiver request for adapted PE. Trustee Bayani?
Aye.
Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. Thank you very much. Item G is report, discussion, and possible action on lease extensions with Mobile Modular. Ahmad.
Okay, and I'm going to ask our coordinator of purchasing, Janet Wolfinger, to present this item.
Good evening. In this item brought to you this evening, we are recommending the approval of the lease extensions with Mobile Modular Portables at 7 of our sites for an annual cost of $249,972. There are currently 28 portables, and once the new science buildings are complete, we can begin removing the leased portables that are no longer needed, and we should be able to do that at both high schools and Hart Middle School in the summer of 2022.
Great, that was my question. And someone else is in the Q&A, I know. Is there any further questions by the board?
Are these mainly because we're doing construction at sites? Or, like, I noticed that it is from Fund 63, so why are Kids Club?
So the district over the years has had need for additional facility space, and the way they have accommodated that is to bring portables onto their campus to be able to deal with the basically space needs and students. And so over the years, be it Amador or Foothill or Hart, those portables have come in. In addition to that, there are a few other portables at a couple of other sites that are being utilized by the Kids Club. And so those ones that are used for the Kids Club purposes are charged to their account. So they're exclusively for the Kids Club. They're not facilities that we use during the day and they use during the afternoon.
Any other questions?
I asked this in the communications. I just wanted to ask this for the benefit of the public. What's the long-term goal for these modulars? I know there's some explanation that this will change once some additional building projects are completed. So could you kind of share to the public a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the Measure I-1, one of its goals was to build permanent classroom space at Amador, Foothill, and Hart. And all of those projects are underway. The Amador and Foothill projects will open to students in the new calendar year 2022, and they'll be finishing up this fall. And we have Hart finishing up in the summer. And so with that, then we will be able to remove those portables. Now, there may be a situation where a school has a particular need for something, and so we'll look at those. We'll look at them we'll reevaluate everything. I already know Foothill has reached out to us on one of their portables that they use for their physical educational program because they don't have space for it. So there is still space issues at our schools, right? But whatever that we had identified under the Measure I-1, we are building classrooms, and so those portables can go away. There's a few other scattering of portables. Looks like some of them are used by Kids Club that we can evaluate through our facility master plan update and see what our plan is. A lot of school districts do have a certain number of portables because that allows for flexibility of you have a year or two of some kind of bubble going through, and so you have portables and you can take them away. So it's not uncommon to have a few here and there, but obviously you don't want to be spending $250,000 annually on 28 portables. And that's the goal of Measure I-1 is to replace those portables.
Thank you for the clarification. I think that's really important to keep in mind, that this is a short-term fix for long-term remedies with additional facilities being built. So thank you.
All right. Is there a motion
Make a motion
to approve?
to approve, yes.
Yeah, okay, just checking.
I'll second it.
I think, no.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the lease extensions with Mobile Modular. Trustee Bayani?
Aye.
Carry on?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. All right, number H, report discussion and possible action to authorize the purchase of picnic tables and benches to accommodate social distancing of students. Ahmad?
Yes. Janet, do you want to take this one, and I can add anything to it as well?
Thank you. In this item, we are recommending the approval to use the in-person grant funds to purchase picnic tables and benches requested by sites to accommodate social distancing of students not to exceed $400,000. We will procure the needed outdoor seating and reduce the lead time by utilizing competitive contracts from the cooperative purchasing organizations such as CMAS, Omnia, and Sourcewell instead of going out and using the bidding process.
Do we know which sites are most impacted that these will be used mostly at?
They were listed.
They were listed?
Yeah, yeah, we listed it in the questions that were submitted to us. And so early on in, the first day of school opened, this became apparent, and we got phone calls from not only the superintendent, but directly from the principals saying that we have an issue. And so, we've been working, we work with the middle school, high school, and some of our largest elementary schools to identify the need. And so we're looking, I don't have the numbers in front of me. Janet, you may have them, but it's a significant number of both benches and tables in the hundreds. Janet, do you have those numbers in front of you?
You sent it to us.
You sent it.
We have it.
Yeah. On the questions.
Yeah, I just don't have it right in front
Questions.
of me. I have good
square ones and
people
long
here
ones.
supporting me. So we're looking, go ahead.
Square picnic tables and 40 rectangle picnic tables.
Yeah, so we're looking at over 100 benches and at about 140 tables. And so these are different rectangular and square tables. So it's a significant number that will help reduce the crowding at the school sites. Currently, kids sit on the concrete floor, on the grass. I mean, kids are kids. They figure it out. But, the weather's going to change, and it's not an ideal situation. I have been at Harvest Park and at Amador and at Foothill, and I have seen the crowds. And so I think this will go a long ways. These are long lead items. They are not cheap. They last a long time. So once we put the order in, it'll take, I think anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks for these items to get here.
So, I was going to ask how long it was going to take us. And this is actually something I'm very passionate about because I remember my freshman, sophomore year in Foothill, we would all text each other who was closest to the table, so we both find a table. And it was practically like a stampede to find a table if you were an underclassman. So it's good to know that we're actually getting tables.
Right.
Repeat, how long will it take? We need them like yesterday.
Yeah. So we're at the mercy of the market, so these are heavy items. So we have identified, that's why we wanted to have this flexibility. We've identified a couple of firms that can provide some of them in 4 weeks, and some of them are going to take longer. Typically, they are a long lead item, but hopefully within, again, as soon as we can get them in that 4 to 12 week time, we'll get them installed.
So I just wanted to say thank you for providing the information in terms of the quantities and benches, and I would concur as having a child in middle school and hearing about the lines for food and then not having a place to eat, and there's signage up. We've received as parents very clear signage for safety protocols, because part of the problem is that students ideally are supposed to be spaced out, and so that's why there's a problem with needing more tables as well, because there's fewer numbers of students that can actually sit per table. So I wanted to thank you for giving us the information and certainly support this, this recommendation.
Mr. Maher.
Just a comment. One, can we make sure we get this out on the weekly notice to parents and to the principals so that they'll get it out in their newsletters? Because I know parents have been biting at all their ears about it, so maybe they can put, hey, great news, we district is purchasing this and this and this.
Sure, we can get the news out, yeah.
Biting at their ears is a new phrase for me. That's pretty descriptive, Mr. Maher.
Well, unless you've been a principal, you wouldn't know.
I think so.
Or
Can I make a motion to approve this?
Please.
And I will second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve and authorize the purchase of picnic tables and benches for social distancing. Trustee Bayani?
Aye.
Carry-on?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Larson, aye. Okay. And now our last regular item tonight.
All right.
Report, discussion, and possible action on the contract for design services with Sujimura Fini Architects for the summer 2022 roofing projects.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Director of Facilities and Construction, John Chwastek, to go over this item.
Thank you, and good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Dr. Haglund, the Cabinet, and the community. Tonight, I'm really pleased to bring this item to the board, which is the next wave of projects that'll be constructed next summer of 2022. It's the design service agreement for the HVAC and roofing projects. There's 6 sites. And then we're pulling these projects next on the list from the priorities list. The projects are packaged into scopes of work that are achievable during the summer. So sometimes you're going to see different waves, different summers of the larger projects, and even some of the elementary schools, they'll have some HVAC and roofing work over a few summers. Let's see, the projects will be bid early in the next year, and this will allow for long lead items like the mechanical units and such to be ordered well in advance of construction. And so they can just start, they can have the material on the site, and then when school is out, construction can go as fast as possible. SFA's proposal for the HVAC and roofing replacement projects at these 6 sites is 1.755,600. So that's $1,755,600. And the administration recommends the board to approve the contract with Sujimura Fini Architects for the design services of the summer 2022 roofing and HVAC projects.
Questions? I don't see any questions.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Proposal for the, like, are we 100% sure that this will be done when this starts?
You broke up a little bit. It was hard for me to hear you. I'm sorry.
How sure are we that the projects will be done by the end of the school year? Because I remember the Foothill project, it kept really extending. So I want to make sure that students won't be affected if this project leads into the school year.
Normally, these projects are very achievable. That's why we've scoped them down to a certain achievable level. What we experienced this last summer is some of the after effects from COVID, and there's a lot of supply chain issues that we couldn't forecast. And so some of the delays were occurred by steel being delayed, some chips being delayed for the controllers, but then also in one case there was a mistake by the contractor ordering the wrong materials. So we had to do some retroactive, fixing and temporary fixes. And so we're trying to minimize that this next summer from the lessons learned we learned this year.
So I just have one question. Is it expected to be completed by the end of the summer? It's a summer project, so it would not affect startup for school next fall?
That is what we anticipate. The schedules are sufficiently, they will be sufficiently bid to where there's at least 2 weeks to 3 weeks where they complete the projects prior to the start of school.
John, I'm sorry, we're having trouble hearing you, too. Can you
Expected,
speak up a little bit?
Oh, no. Sorry, I'll shake my computer. Yes, the plan is always to have the projects complete construction approximately 2 to 3 weeks prior to the start of school. So it should not, we normally plan not to have any projects go into the fall semester. There are rare occasions where we have to plan on that when there's larger projects.
Okay, thank you. That was the only question I had. Thank you.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the contract for Sigmuri Finney Architects for design services for the summer 2022 roofing and HVAC projects.
I'll second it.
All righty, it's been moved and seconded to approve the design contract for the 2022 roofing projects with Sujimura Finney. Trustee Bayani?
Aye.
Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
And Larson, aye. All right, that concludes our action items for this evening. We have board reports and requests. Are there any meetings people wish to report on or requests for future agenda or reports? Don't see any this evening. All right. On the agenda, it says our next board meeting will be the 23rd, and that's true. That is our next regular business meeting on September 23rd. However, next Tuesday, on September 14th, we have our first of 4 of our community board meetings. Unfortunately, this year, the first one will be on Zoom instead of in person, but it will be at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, 9/14. So tune in and bring your questions. With that, we do need to adjourn to closed session. However, there will not be any report out. So thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.